what are the effects of global warming in Margaux? And do you think that the Syrah has a future in Bordeaux, Margaux?
It's difficult to know exactly what global warming is doing in Bordeaux. The major change that we're seeing we've seen over the last 15 years is that we seem to be picking a few days later than usual.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily great changes in temperature, it's great changes in the amount of water that falls, because in 2003, there was a huge drought and heat wave that swept through Bordeaux, and the water table went down at that time. And since then, we've never caught up. We've never been able to catch up on the actual water table. So it's more of a water problem and drainage problem that we've been having since 2003.
Yes.
As an effect of that, Merlot, which is in the Médoc, are therefore grown on gravel, on lighter, sandier soils, seems to be suffering a lot more than the Cabernet Sauvignon, which is more sturdy, has a deeper root system itself.
Yes.
And sometimes in the afternoon, when it's really hot before picking in September, if you go through the vineyard and you look at the leaves on the vines, they're all turned over upside down, they're suffering. There's a certain amount of stress. And I'm sure you'll be going to many chateaux in the Médoc, and I'm sure most people are talking to you about higher proportions of Cabernet Sauvignon in their blends that have been produced, and that's simply because from time to time there are plots of Merlot that are suffering, and if a vine suffers, it cannot feed its little ones, it cannot feed the grapes themselves, because the vine always has to first of all creates reserves for herself to survive, and then the little ones come afterwards, and it means that some of the grapes are not being fed properly all the time, and therefore you have wines that have a certain hollowness about them. They're not really complete and full. To come to Syrah, I know that there are a few people.
Nasty question, isn't it?
No, not nasty. It's a good question, because it does prove that Bordeaux, and I'm sure most vineyards in the world, are constantly asking themselves questions. I mean, as I said earlier on, you never have to be satisfied, and we work with nature, so we have questions to ask every day and every year.
Yes.
But it just also proves that we are thinking of other things and eventually seeing what will happen. And we have planted ourselves a few plants of Syrah, just to see how things evolve. Eventually, perhaps it might happen one day.
Yes.
We're told that,
50 years,
I come from Scotland, and some people have told me that they might be growing grapes in Scotland one day with global warming, which is possible. And we've been told ourselves in Bordeaux by scientists that we're going to have the same climate as Madrid in about 50 years' time. And in fact, the Loire Valley will have the same climate as Bordeaux. But whether that's really going to be true or not, we don't know. But things are changing.
Yes.
Things are changing. But we have to try. We have to experiment and try and see what is the best for us. But for the moment in the Médoc, anyway, Cabernet Sauvignon and Petit Verdot are probably the two most dominant grape varieties in most people's blends today.
Yes. What do you think about the Malbec here? Because Malbec all over the world has been becoming a very popular variety as a single varietal wine.
It's true, yes, and there was a lot of Malbec in Bordeaux. I know a couple of properties in Saint-Emilion where there are still some Malbec, but just a few plants as experimental as well. But the Malbec doesn't have the right balance in the soil structures that we have in Bordeaux. They usually produce very large grapes with a big volume, therefore a lot of dilution, and they're not good for our blending. We have to have a more extreme climates that we can control, that they can control with irrigation in Chile and in Argentina and places like that. But it hasn't been a success in Bordeaux.